All right, so last week we start the book really for the first time. I mean, for the first time, as the fifth time that I work in this book, basically. And the very first chapter, it starts with God, God in infinity, we covered that. The proofs of God's existence, we covered that. And now we should start on question 9 that deals still a little bit of the proofs of the existence of God, but starts with the attributes of divinity, with some more interesting part. And the finish chapter 1 with pantheism, which we'll likely be able to go on today. Just to recap the very first question of the book, question number 1, the most important question: what is God? God is the supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things. It was revealed by the psychography of Brother X that Kardec was having trouble to start the book, how to start the book. And he was advised by the Spirit, so well, we start with the beginning of everything. And what is the beginning of everything? It's only God, right? The creator of everything. And that's what Kardec did, but he wanted to make sure that he does not continue with the same idea of this anthropomorphic God. We need to eliminate that idea of a God created at our image instead of the God created us at God's image, right? So he questioned what and not who is God, which was the beginning of the problems against the spirituals, especially for the organized religions that didn't like the idea of putting God of something like that is not a who, that does not have a personality. But that was exactly the idea, the objective of Kardec, to remove the idea of a God humanized. So what is God? And the spirits respond. And you see now when you deal with the attributes, why it's a somewhat a vague answer, does not really go in great definition. There's no definition. God is the supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things. Then there were some doctrines or organized religions that the equal God to infinity. And the Spirit Scripture revealed that no, we can understand God as being infinite for not having a beginning and not having an end, different from us who have a beginning but not an end. Or you can understand God being infinite in his love towards us, in his justice, but we cannot equal the attributes to the thing, right? You cannot equal the creator with the creation. The universe is infinite. God is more than the infinite. God is even outside of the infinite, right? Or outside of the universe. So you have to be careful not to equal the creator with the creation. The watchmaker does not become a watch because it makes a watch. Neither does the watch becomes the watchmaker for being created by it. When it proves the existence of God, primarily in the scientific premise that there is no effect without a cause, everything derives from something that is not spontaneously created. Everything comes from something. And when we go through a different work of saying what comes from what comes from, you may be able to understand. No, muscle comes from protein comes from those elements come from this and that. At the end of it, you have something, that particle that only a intelligence could have created. So basically, it was not created by us. It was created by this supreme intelligence that we choose to call God. But anyone can call anyone they want, anything they want, as long as it's agreeable. They don't have the same attributes that we're going to see very soon. Another very good another very good, I forgot what the word I want to say, proof of the existence of God is our innate faith. It's very well spoken in the Gospel according to Spiritism that all the cultures throughout this globe has that understanding of the existence of this God, of this divinity. And of course, how they perceive that divinity varies in accordance with its cultures, and its cultures varies in accordance with primarily climate and topography. So someone who lives in the top mountains of the Himalayas, we have a different image of understanding of this God from someone who lives, I don't know, in the Amazon jungles, so to say. Those things with those primary climate and topography that will define the vegetation and everything else will lead us as simple individuals to have a different understanding of that supreme being. But they all have the innate understanding, certainty of that existence of that supreme being. It's only when we evolve more intellectually, and with that comes our pride, that we start to challenge that our own natural instinct to have that understanding of the existence of the divinity. With intelligence, so we can somewhat bypass the instinct. And with proper training, you can even bypass the survival instinct, right? The Secret Service bypass that. When everybody's running away from bullet, they run towards the bullet to protect the president or whoever they are protecting. And that requires tremendous amount of training, and only with intelligence you can do that. So one of the misuse of our intelligence is exactly to start to challenge some of very important instincts. One of them is the understanding of the existence of the supreme being. This is only to recap everything that we saw last week. Today we start with question 9. Philip?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where may we see the first cause of all things, a supreme intelligence, superior to all other intelligences? There is the proverb that dictates, the worker is known by his or her work. In that case, look at the work and you will find the author. Pride is what creates skeptics. Arrogant human beings want nothing to be above them, which is why they are called strong-minded. Pitiful beings, just one breath from God would obliterate them. We evaluate the power of intelligence by its works, as no human being could create that which is produced by nature. The first cause must be superior to humans, regardless of the wonders accomplished by humankind. Human intelligence itself has a cause, and the greater the results achieved, the greater the cause of which it is the effect. It is this supreme intelligence that is the first cause of all things, whatever name humanity may bestow upon it.
Okay, so then you go back to the proud scientist who went to God and said, give me a handful of dirt and I'll make my own planet. And God said, well, I have no doubt that you are able to do so, but you have to make you one handful of dirt first. And that is where you see the absolute supreme intelligence of the Creator. When we get to the point in which, again, our science, our intelligence will allow us to reveal just about everything until we get to that primordial element that no one would ever create. That has to come of a supreme intelligence that is way outside of the spirits as humans. There is a Dr. Morrison. He has a book and it says that 7 proofs of the existence of God, in which he brings things that you see only in our planet, all the mathematical perfections and with numbers, with equations that human could never even think. If you just think something like the rotation of Earth on its axis, right? What we define days and nights that give us 24 hours of one complete rotation. It's the number of 24 hours is our creation, right? Our created hours, but the speed of the rotation is God creations, right? If we decide to make a day of 48 hours, we could do it, right? We invent the hours, we invent the way of measure things, and the way that we invent those things, it measures distance primarily. The speed of the rotation of Earth in its axis is absolutely perfect for the existence of life as we know it. If we slow down things a little bit, I don't know, then the day would have 10 days of night and 10 days of day. There will be no life on Earth, or at least not or close to the equator, because 10 days of sun beating up on the structures around the equators and a little bit farther equator would burn everything. But with the perfection of God, the mathematical perfection of God, and was Isaac Newton that said, right, if God has a language, its language is mathematics, right? He calculated to perfect the necessary speed that the sun can come in, warm up the planet, and get out without burning everything. So the night can come in, cool everything off, and maintain that cycle that allows life to prevail, right? And you won't know this matters, but if we go to the extremities of things, it's different. You may have nights of months, you have days of months, then time of the year. We're talking about here, everything in relation to the equator. And even that is mathematical calculated, so life could exist throughout the planet. If you think the distance of the planet, Earth planet, to the moon or to the sun, if the moon was a little bit closer, you'd have ocean waves size of the Empire States. There would be no way that could support life as well. If the sun was a little bit close, the sun winds would destroy everything as well. So everything is so properly calculated that, as Einstein says, that behind all this, there must be a supreme intelligence. It's just illogical, unscientific to believe that all this arrangement of the distance between the celestial bodies, of the speed of each one of those of celestial bodies rotate on its own axis and rotate on the axis of bigger celestial bodies. It has to be calculated. You cannot believe that happened by chance. And finally, you can answer those very smart guys, where does your intelligence comes from? Your intelligence in itself is a revelation of the existence of God. So the scientists that is humble, we understand that by their works, they reveal the existence of God, revealing all this micro and the macro universe. And on its harmony, it reveals the existence of God. And only when we become extremely proud that we walk away from this absolute reality. Questions, comment? Okay, so now we go into the attributes of the divinity. And again, this very well extended in the book of Genesis, chapter 2, that is titled God. And Kardec is very well. We're going to see those question answers over here, but Kardec is very certain to say that in a way we'll be able to understand God. Anyone who says they understand God is quite full of oneself, but we can come out with some qualities, some attributes of a entity to be God. In order to be God, at least those minimal things that entity would have to possess. Philip?
Number 10, is humanity capable of comprehending the essential nature of God? No. Human beings lack the sense required to comprehend it.
Thanks. So the answer is very clear, it's no. Spirits playing the role of humans as a spirit at that level of humanity, we are far from being able to understand the essential nature of God. It's like the sense required to comprehend it. And I was a little bit troubled by the word sense, that to me, that I associate with the physicality, the sense of smell, the sense of tactile, the sense of taste. But that is the right word. And not only, also, but by the sense. And in the, at least, again, ones, it's some translations a or one sense. Try to either translate very literal, which is very interesting that the spirits are telling us there is a one thing, it's the sense. No, it's not in the plural. So there is one quality that is to have to conquer in order to comprehend God. And sense is something that we perceive from the external, right? Something that comes to us that we are able to associate with, to reason with. that we are able to reason with. And Jesus studied on his Sermon on the Mount, right? The poor of spirits will see God. So in order to comprehend God, to see God, one of the senses that, whatever that sense that we have to conquer, we're gonna have to purify ourselves. We're gonna have to be a lot more pure, because the pure spirits will see God. Comments, questions? Okay, number 11.
Will humans ever be able to understand the mystery of divinity? Humans will see and understand God when their spirits are no longer obscured by matter, and when they have come closer by striving for perfection. The inferiority of human faculties makes it impossible for human beings to fully grasp the essential nature of God. In the early stages of life, humans often confuse the creator with the creature, attribute the imperfections of the latter to God. As the moral sense of human beings becomes more developed, they are able to penetrate the nature of things more deeply. They will be able to form a truer, more conforming and rational idea of God, even though it will always be incomplete.
Okay. Humans will see and understand God when the spirits are no longer obscured by matter. And when Jesus said, the pure of spirits will see God, right? So what it's the sense that's required to see God can only be a part of us, or can be revealed to us once we are purified, when we are less dense materialized, because no longer obscured by matter. When we are able to transcend ourselves from a material being to a spiritual being, we understand that we, in essence, are a spirit, although we do it intellectually, spiritists do it intellectually, but perhaps spiritually, morally, we're still far from really living that thing that we believe we are, an eternal spirit. Then you'll be able to understand the divinity, perhaps even see the divinity. It's interesting that even before we become Christs, it says, have come closer by striving for perfection. Not even have reached the level of Christ, you'll be able to have a better understanding of what's God. It is naturally that in order for us to understand things, we have to create analogies, right? The example that I always use is the fish who got out of the ocean and spent the weekend in Times Square and go back to the ocean, and they have to explain everything that the fish experienced and what everything the fish saw. How is going to do it? It's going to have analogies with things that they have in the ocean, they have in the environment. So you're going to make comparisons of the light with the bioluminosity. You're going to have to make comparison of the buildings with the coral reefs, where there is, and so on and so forth, right? Because if you just come there and talk about things that cannot have and the mind cannot grasp, it's impossible. Most of our teachings is done by means of great analogies. That's why Christ teach in parables, and part of parables is the method of teaching of all the sacred books. You know, the whole Buddhist use parables and stories to give a moral teaching, because then you can create an analogy that you can make and things make sense to us. So we at one point did the same thing in order to try to understand God, right? Use elements of nature. The all powerful may be fire that destroys everything when it's got upset, but it's the same God, is the same fire that is able to cook food and make things that otherwise would not be um, edible becomes edible. We can make even comparison with us itself, and we did. Unfortunately, we created that analogy of God with us, of gods with us. The Greek mythology is loaded with that. The idea of a God that gets angry and punishes and gets upset and gets jealous. It's all human attributes that we associate to the divinity in our ignorance. And we're having a hard time getting rid of that and accept the idea of a creator, a thing that has nothing to do with our moral qualities or lack of it. Comments? Questions? Okay, 12.
If we cannot comprehend the essential nature of God, can we grasp an idea of some of God's perfections? Yes, some of them. Human beings understand them better as they rise above matter. They catch glimpses of them through thought.
Okay, so this is where Kardec got his ideas to write in the attributes of God in Genesis, when he says, yeah, we can figure some things of a perfection in order to be a perfection, a perfect creator in order to be a perfect creator. What are those things that it must have? And in a way, it's almost like, what are the things that it cannot have in order to be a perfect, to be a God? It has to have some qualities, and absolutely cannot have some other qualities, otherwise that God would not be God. But we can grasp some of them, but it's still some of them. As we progress, as we leave the level of humanity as eternal spirits and jump on another level, you understand a little bit more. You'll be able to perceive some of the qualities of those attributes of God a little bit more until you reach the level of getting close to the crisis, when we'll have a lot clearer understanding of the supreme creator, whatever that thing may be. Comments, questions? All right, 13.
We say that God is eternal, infinite, unchangeable, immaterial, unique, all-powerful, supremely just and good. Is this not a complete impression of God's attributes? From your point of view, yes, because you think that you sum up everything in those terms. However, you must understand that there are things that transcend the intelligence of even the most intelligent human beings, and that your language cannot express. Reason tells you that God must possess all these qualities in the supreme degree, because if one of them were short or not possessed to an infinite degree, the Creator would not be superior to everything and everyone, and thus would not be God. To be above all things, God must have no variations and must have no conceivable imperfections.
Begin the second half of the series tonight, and they'll do so without John Jordan. He had the big game last night, but he's out with a sore knee. He's considered day to day. And you look ahead to the schedule.
What is going on?
All right, people forget to mute themselves, that's no problem. Okay, so I said, some of the attributes of this superior being, they are absolute for a God to be God. It needs to be eternal, infinite, unchangeable, immaterial, unique, all-powerful, supreme, just, and good. Question is this a complete impression? And the spirit, yeah, for your level, and the spirits living the human experience, that may suffices. But it does not sum all the attributes of God. And more importantly, most important statement here is you must understand that there are things that transcends the transcends intelligence and of even the most intelligent human being, and that your language cannot express. So there are things for us to conquer yet, that we cannot even have enough intelligence to start to think about. We are in such a level, it's like being in I don't know, any one of us being being in a classroom where they are for PhDs discussing astrophysics, and they put those equations in the board that is full of Greek words. There is not even numbers. How is mathematics without number? You know, it's a bunch of Greek words, and we all there look at it and say we don't even have the ability of question anything. We are such a level, so distant from the eloquence of the discussion of the topic. Astrophysics is at the highest level that you cannot even ask a question. You don't have intelligence not even to ask. When dealing with God, the human race, even the most intelligent human being, is at that level yet. We cannot even fathom to have a question. We don't even have words. Even if we could have a question, which we don't, we would not have words, means to express that question. Therefore, you cannot in any way at the human level understand God completely. But at our level, you say, okay, I'll give you that. All those attributes, eternal, infinite, unchangeable, immaterial, unique, all powerful, supreme, just, and good. Yes, it's true, but that's just the beginning. It's just the tip of the iceberg. In order to be God, it has will that, but that is not all. That's just the beginning that you are able to comprehend at your level yet. And then there will given very quick, very shortened idea of why God is eternal, is unchangeable, is material, and each one of that. Any question there so far? All right, so let's go one by one.
God is eternal. If God had a beginning, it either would have to have had sprung from nothing or have been created by a being that existed before God. This is how we gradually arrive at the idea of infinity and eternity.
Because we got troubled by words, by semantics. It is my understanding, I could be wrong, that eternal is with beginning or end. And infinity is with neither. There's no beginning and no end. So by that, God is both, because everything that has a beginning and no end also, I'm sorry, everything that has no beginning and no end is also eternal, because it has no end, right? So if God had a beginning, it means by the premise that are used before in sciences, there is no effect of a cause. So what would be the cause of the beginning of God? What would be the generator, that primordial point that initiate and provide God to have an existence. We're gonna come out in, so then that thing, that primordial thing would be the real God. And then we go in chasing a dog's tail, right? Because you gotta be nowhere. Well, if that thing created God, then that thing is God. Well, if that thing created God, then this thing is God. So God has to be infinite with no beginning and no end. Any question about it? Disagree with that? So next.
God is unchangeable. If God were subject to change, the laws governing the universe would be unstable.
Okay, perfection, change. Why then you want change perfection? If something's absolutely perfected, it becomes a change in itself because it cannot get any better and you'll not get any worse. You have reached the perfection and it cannot be changed anymore. If God was subject to change, it means that God it's not absolutely perfect yet, right? And therefore, the laws that we have governing everything, the laws created by God, would have to undergo change as well. Because now that God has changed, let's say that God has got better, then would create the laws that are also better. So it would be unreasonable to believe that God could change.
Next,
Yeah, so nobody has any questions? Yeah.
God is immaterial. God's nature is completely different from everything that we call matter. Otherwise, God would not be unchangeable. God would be subject to the transformations of matter.
Okay, there's another law of nature, right? Lavoisier law that in nature everything changes. Nothing is destroyed, but everything's modified, right? That's one of our laws in our physical science. So if God was material, would have to be changed at some point. Would have to be transformed at some point. Would have to be destroyed and recycled at some point, because that's a law of nature, right? So God could not be of any kind of matter. So we in spirituals understand that there is in everything that exists three things. God that creates everything, and from God creates two things: the cosmic fluid and the intelligent principle. From the cosmic fluid, all matter, everything that is material, energy, our perispirit, derives from that cosmic fluid, and all intelligence is derived from the intelligent principle. So God is outside of everything that's material, and God is outside of everything that is spiritual. God is creator of all those things. Does it make sense?
Elmo, Carol here. May I interject something, a question here? It says God is immaterial. I don't exactly like that phraseology. I think would non-material be a better substitute?
Okay.
Yeah, immaterial to me has a negative connotation.
I'm gonna make a note of that. Look at the original, because John reads French, and see if the original is immaterial. But I thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, M is an okay usage. I am would also mean non-material, but it also implies a slight negative connotation. That's what I perceive.
Okay.
Yeah, anyway, thank you. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. That's good to have the native English speaker to help us with those things. Because words matter. And we should seek to have the best possible words for everything, especially when we're dealing this book. Okay?
Next,
Yeah.
God is unique. If several gods existed, there would be neither unity in the plans of the universe nor power in its organization.
Yeah, from our experiences, we get into the idea of democracy. And I am all for the democracy, don't get me wrong. But come to a point that there should be no democracy. It's one God, absolutism should prevail in this case. Then you take care of everything. They're great. You maintain the harmony of everything. If there was more than one God, then which God is more God than the other? Which one is lesser God than the other? Which one would prevail with his ideas or her ideas? Even in the polytheistic doctrines, it's interesting that they have a bunch of gods. They have God for this, God for that, God. And then there is a God that is the leader of all the gods. So it's almost that they don't have one and only unique God that is in charge of all the others. And that's not too far behind of what we understand here. One God who is dictating, giving commands to all the Christs, and all those Christs will maintain order in different parts of this universe, like Jesus is our governor over here. And I'm sure that Jesus have all his good workers that manages a lot of things in this planet. Maybe he has someone managing the ocean, someone manages the forest. I'm not saying that's the case, but I don't believe that's the case. But the doctrine does not say that, right? But everything is under one single law that created by one single God. Otherwise, there would not be harmony in the universe.
Next.
Yep.
God is God is all powerful because God is unique. Without supreme powers, there would be something more powerful than or as powerful as God. The Creator would not have created everything, and those which God had not created would be the work of a God.
So God, in order to be able to create everything and to keep everything in harmony and maintain his laws at a constant level, would have to be all powerful and would have to be unique. Because someone else come on, let me trick a little bit with this law over here, well, that'll be chaos. We just spoke about changing the speed of the rotation of Earth by a few miles per hour, kilometers per hour, would be chaotic for the planet. Someone tries to do that, would be a serious problem for all of us. The universe is maintaining this perfect harmony because there is laws. And someone may say, oh, but there are stars dying and destroying a big explosion. It's everything inside of those laws. Everything that happens inside of those laws, right? And it is because of the death of those stars, the destruction of those things, that things are rebuilt, right? We are indeed product of those destruction of those stars. We are indeed stardust. Now, the constitution of our blood cells, the hemoglobin, the iron in our blood cells, come from the space, come from the destruction of those stars that we come from. So everything has a reason and it has an objective, as a what for. And everything is inside of those perfect laws created by God. Even if it appears to be chaotic and destructive, everything has a cause, everything has an objective, and everything leads to goodness. And the last one.
God is supremely just and good. The great wisdom of the divine laws is clearly revealed in the smallest and the greatest things. This wisdom makes it impossible to doubt God's justice and goodness.
Okay. So the only thing that we can accept the idea of this absolutism of God, right? To be the all-powerful, it's my laws, I know all the laws, is because God is absolute, supreme, just, and good. Without this, the most important of them all of the attributes above breaks down. Because God is not absolute, supreme, and just. Being all-powerful would be a disaster. Right? And we have examples here. But give absolutism and give a country, a nation, a city at the hands of a leader who is not just and good. And what happens to that community? What happens to that group? Or the injustices that happens, right? We have many examples throughout history and living those experiences right now in the present existence of what the lack of being absolutely just and good can cause. So the only way that a God would be able to have all those attributes up here, being unique, being all powerful, is because God is supremely just and good. And everything that all the laws created by God are to have that image of God be absolutely just and good. Right? You want to go back to the book 3 of this book that deals with the moral laws. The very first question that asks, what is the natural laws or what are divine laws? And the Spirit says there's the laws created by God for our happiness. Why created for our happiness? Because God is supremely just and good. And everything that God creates is think of its creation to maintain justice and goodness in his creation. Unfortunately, we mess everything up, but we have to do the consequences of what we do. So we have, if you are now breaking those laws, or if those laws we are creating harmony in the atmosphere of this planet, we're gonna have to deal the consequence of that until you learn that by following God's laws, that they be created for our happiness is the only way that we will reach that state of absolute peace on earth for all of us. And when it comes to the moral laws, naturally, it's what Christ come to teach us. That is the moral laws of God. I'm not gonna go into pantheism, it's 5 minutes. Because I think we need to spend more time on it. And I have to read a little bit more on it myself. Any questions, any comments, anything that anyone disagree?
One comment,
Please.
pantheism, the first sentence of pantheism should say, is God a distinct being, or as some believe, the result of all the forces and intelligence of the universe? And then the second line, according to Joel, if it were the latter, God would not be. So look into those two changes that he made last time.
Okay, so say that again, hold on, because I was swapping it.
Okay, is God a distinct being, or as some believe, the result of all the forces and intelligence of the universe combined? In essence, The second "or," as some believe, is crossed out.
Okay,
And then on the next line, if it were the latter, not the former.
It's already corrected in the new edition now.
okay. All right, so Louise is telling me that the newer edition is already corrected.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
I noticed that 2 years ago. And then I look at my book and then it's corrected already.
Good. All right, any more comments, any more questions? No, Carol, can I make the final prayer for us?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much, Elmo. Thank you for directing us this evening, and thank you, Philip, for reading, and thank you, everyone who would be our group of participants this evening. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks for the opportunity to be together again as brothers and sisters for our studies of the Spirit's book, Chapter 1, entitled God. God is the first cause of all things and is of supreme intelligence. There may be many different names for God, depending on a culture or a geographical location. The one God is eternal, infinite, all-powerful, unique, supremely just and good. Human beings lack the sense required to comprehend God. When we become less dense in matter and morally advancing toward perfection, we will have a better understanding of what God is. God has no imperfections and is superior to everything and everyone. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and for our loved ones, our teachers, the directors, our counselors, the mediums, the workers, and all who have joined in as participants. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all spiritus centers throughout the world, that they may grow, thrive, expand, and be protected each hour of the day and night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. And may we go forth now and remind ourselves to be beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity. So be it.
Thanks, everyone. I hope all of our friends who are sick will recover quickly.
Bye.
Bye. See you guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Elmo.
Thank you. Sunday is the medium's book.
Oh, right. Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Elmo.